Yeah, I'm clicking on people until somebody gets their butt in here. I tried playing music last week and I got in a little bit of trouble for it, so I'm not allowed to play music that doesn't belong to me. So whoever comes on first, then I get started, because that's just the way I roll. But I like clicking on all my friends here. Kimberly. Kimberly is in our team of fabulous healing practitioners. She has inside and out naturally, and she's amazing. So I wonder why I can't go in here and just click on anybody. You know, I'm still figuring out all of this business with tagging people and doing all of this stuff. So I'm excited for tonight. I've actually been doing some homework for you all. Whoever shows up in here. But it's coming up on a holiday weekend, so I'm wondering how many people are going to show up. It's always good whoever shows up. So when somebody does show up in here, let me know and give me a little wave so I know that you're here, because that's when I get started. But in the meantime, I'm going to deal with some stuff, because I was looking for something that I wanted to share with you. And I could have sworn that my friend here shared the thing that I'm looking for, and she didn't, or else she took it down. Hey, Kim, you're here. Hello. Thank you for letting me know you're here. Now I can get started. So, welcome to Conscious Mind Tripping with me, Audrey Newmont. It's another week, and it's just before the 4th of July, and all kinds of stuff is happening. So I want to start by saying some announcements. I'm putting out an email either later today or tomorrow. And it's got a whole bunch of new classes that we've got going on, a whole bunch of events, and some fun little bits of information that I shared. One in particular is a something that one of my clients did that I thought was pretty amazing. And speaking of one of my friends, I'm going to a concert later tonight. I'm very excited for that. And on our mainstream metaphysics show on next Tuesday, we're going to have Nick and I think we're going to continue on with the subject that we were doing this past week. If you haven't seen it yet, you can go to our Facebook pages, and it's on our YouTube page, the Mainstream Metaphysics YouTube page. And we were talking about the fifth dimension, we were talking about ascension and those sort of things. So I think it was a very interesting conversation, and I shared a couple of things that were, let's just say, not easy for me to share, because people don't get what happened with me, and they think I might be a little off my rocker, which I am not. So you can check that out. It's on my Facebook page and Nick's Facebook page, or the YouTube. So with that, I would like to get into tonight's conversation. And Kim, I'm thinking that you had a fabulous time in Hawaii, and you're ready to be back here in Los Angeles. Welcome back. We still have to get together, and I have time coming up. So tonight's topic is freedom. And I was thinking about it and why it's so important. You know, we have this day coming up, what we call the 4th of July, and some people are calling it Freedom Day. And when I heard that, I've been pondering what exactly freedom is. And because I work with my clients and, you know, I talk with people all the time, I started really looking at the idea of freedom from a little bit more of an expanded place. And I was thinking about it. There's physical freedom, there is mental freedom, and emotional freedom that I would like to get into tonight. And I think it's one of those times in history that we really want to sit back and look at exactly what freedom means for us. So when we're talking about freedom in our physicality, in my notes I wrote, oh, and there's also financial freedom. I wrote, we have been known in the United States to live in the home of the free, the land of the free, and the home of the brave. And I started thinking about it, and I'm looking at what's going on with our, let's just say, our world right now. And I don't know about you all, but since all of this has been going down for the last year and a half with all of this upheaval, I've been looking down a lot of different avenues, and I look at a lot of different kinds of information. And I don't take any of it or much of it to be absolute truth. So when I see things, sometimes what I'll do is I'll go into government documents, because that's pretty much where we can get to some of the truth of anything that's going on. You're looking at what actually has been written. And it's interesting because what I found is even in those government documents, there can be these little leeways and these things that you look at that aren't absolute. But what we can know in the moment is, for many of us, we don't have certain freedoms of our own word, our own voice. There's a lot of censoring that's going on, and it's censoring on things that we should be able to talk about. I mean, if you can't talk about what is actually going on from various vantage points, then what do you have? You don't have your freedom of speech. You literally have censorship. And I started thinking about our Constitution and went into looking at the Constitution. And it's very interesting. A lot of people have no idea that back in 1790, things started to get changing with the Constitution, and then they literally changed the Constitution in 1871. I didn't know that. I didn't know that before I started looking at this. And then it got repealed in 1874, and then they started putting the bits of what had gotten repealed back into it. So why is that important for us? It's because the original Constitution that we founded this country on is no longer like the same Constitution, and there's a whole bunch of, let's just say, there's a whole bunch of consequences that happen from that. So I'm not going to get a whole bunch into it, but I think that that is something that we should all really know, because it directly affects us. And there's other information that I think we're unaware of. Start looking into what exactly is the Federal Reserve. And when we pay the taxes, where does that go? What does that look like? Because that gets into our freedoms as well, as far as our financial freedoms. So I'm not going to go into that subject because that's not the main part of what I wanted to talk about today. But I did want to bring it up because I think it's very important for us. And quite honestly, for myself, I was very ignorant about a lot of it. I had no idea. So when I started looking at that, can I actually, me, myself, do something about it? No, but it's good for me to have an awareness of. It's good for me to be cognizant of what's going on those parts of our country. And the other part of this is, I really understand that for many of us, we're super busy. We're working a lot, we're trying to make our ends meet, and we have a lot of things going on. So I get it that a lot of people can't actually look and read the whole Constitution, though I will say my daughter did. My youngest daughter, that's what she wanted for Christmas. I got her some books on the Constitution, so I thought it was very interesting that she wanted to read it. So when you're going in and you're looking at, we are the home of the free. In some ways we are free. We're free to do certain things, but there's avenues where we're kind of not so free. And I think it's important to recognize that and be able to do something in your own life about it. And for me, what I do in my own life, and I've said this to everybody many times, but I'm going to say it yet again, the controller of your life is your belief systems. That's the thing that controls everything in your life. What do you believe? And part of those belief systems come from what do you know? And I always like that idea that information equals power. So the more that we're informed, the more we're owning our power to own our intentions, one of the first buttons on that controller, our attention, and our perception. So the more that we're aware of who we are in the world, who we are in our own country, who we are in each state, because I wrote here, home of the free, and it's like, do you have freedom? And I wrote, it depends on what state you're in. So it's not just what state you're in, it's what state you're in. So with that being said, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into what state we're in. And I live in California, and I think for our state in particular, we've had a lot more mandatory sort of lockdowns, and I think we're going back into another moment where masks inside are going to be mandatory again. And I find it very interesting that in all of our 50 states, and I think New York is right there as well, we've had a lot more of these lockdowns, and I don't know how successful that's been. And I know that a lot of people are annoyed with some of the choices that our leadership has done, and there's some consequences that could be heading their way. So the reason why all of this is important as well is because there is this idea that with all the things that we've gotten on with this past year and a half, that there is these avenues that we should all be going down. And you know pretty much what those are. It's the avenues for our health. And there's many people that I've talked to, and one person in particular who thought she really had to go down that avenue and took that option, the shot, and she ended up getting very sick right after it and had some, let's just say, neurological damage and some pain, like a lot of pain. And luckily enough, we work with holistic doctors. She went to one of those doctors and was able to take this remedy that she created, and within a few days, after weeks of feeling really bad, was able to feel better about it. So it's super important to look at all the options, and if you are within your own self, like I am not in a position to be able to do that physically. My body is not up for that. And with the different practitioners that we've worked with, there's been many people who have had consequences from that. So it has to be where we have the freedom to make that choice, whether or not to do that, and not feel like we can't have the right to move around freely if we don't make that choice, or if we don't make that choice. So that's another one of the freedoms that we're looking at right now, and I think it's very super important for people to be able to own their choice. It's my body, and I'm thinking if it doesn't work, and I end up getting sick, which there could be a high probability, then it's not worth it for the percentage that I would be getting sick. And if other people are vaccinated, I shouldn't be getting them sick. So that's one of the freedoms that I wanted to talk about today. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole deeply, but I understand why people want to do it. I understand why people don't. And I personally think it should be a choice for many reasons. And the other thing I wanted to address, it's back to the information part of it. There are a whole bunch of holistic options that are available that make it easier to build your keep your immune system built up, to keep ourselves healthy. Like, I've been doing a holistic approach for a long time now, and I haven't been sick with anything other than removing the toxins that I've got built up in me for about, I don't know, like a year and a half to 2 years. I've got a great team of holistic doctors that I chose, and that's the avenue that I go about. But I think that a lot of us are so pressured by the big corporations to do these things. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Nick, about 3 years ago, he had a moment where he had some high blood pressure, and it was a really big problem for a short period of time. And he actually did go to the doctor. He got meds, which I think it made it worse. And so we were working with our holistic doctor at the time, Jeff Sherman, and he did what Jeff recommended, and it brought that down actually pretty quick and with no pharmaceuticals. He did all of these healthy options of eating, he did the healthy options of drinking, exercise, and now his blood pressure is just right. I think a lot of the time we don't realize that there are a lot of different options, and maybe sometimes the options do take a period of time, but it doesn't have, let's just say, any of the side effects that sometimes pharmaceuticals can have. And not to say that all pharmaceuticals are bad, I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is a lot of times there's options that are a little more, let's just say, natural within our bodies. It's, earth options. And just going to say, if you ever go to my holistic doctor's place, she has, I don't even know, probably thousands of different things that she puts together to make the formulas to work with us. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is mental freedom. And I really wanted to get into this topic because I think that people think that we're all mentally just free. And I'm just going to say, if you're watching TV, if you're going to the movies, there's a lot that is being, let's just say, suggested to us that is not where we're owning our freedom. As an example, if you go to, there was a period of time my daughters and I were like, wow, you know what, there's a lot of horror movies out there. Like, there's not a lot of those light romances or, intrigue sort of movies. It was like a lot of horror movies for a while. And I was thinking about it, and it's when people go to a horror movie, you got to remember, you're in hypnosis. When you're watching a movie and you're sitting in the movie theater, a lot of times we forget that we're even sitting in the theater and we're just watching this movie and we get sucked into it. Nick was saying something yesterday about getting sucked into the Jumanji game, and it's kind of like that. So when you're watching horror movies, it goes in to our psyche, it goes into our mind. And I want you to think about it. If you do watch horror movies, how many times right before you wake up in the morning, do you have really bad dreams? That's your mind looking to process out what the messages are that you're watching with those horror movies. So it's important to understand, if you're watching TV, all those commercials that go flying through there, they are a manipulation. And we're kind of on a level being programmed. Because when you're sitting there on the couch or the bed or whatever, and you're just watching it, they know how, when they're making those commercials, all the marketing, it's like, it's geared towards getting your mind to accept this is good for you. You want this, you must have it. And so when we're watching and we're in a suggestible state, especially before we're going to sleep at night, our mind is just taking that on, and before you know it, it's like, wow, I really have to have that, or I really want to do whatever the thing is. And the other, let's just say, big one is the news. So for those of you that are watching one specific kind of news, they are a lot of times showing you what they want you to know. So it's important to get it, understand that's what they're saying, and you can look at another kind of news, what are they saying? And then look at another kind of news, what are they saying? So instead of just watching the same thing, you're getting different avenues of news. And I mean, when I say different avenues of news, there's you can go on YouTube and you can get any kind of news about anything. So even at that, when you're watching anything that you're watching, you want to be looking at various forms of news, and you want to be using your ability to reason, look at it with logic, and not just accept anything that comes your way. It's like, when I'm watching these things, I'll listen, is this actually happening? Is this reasonable? Would this be logical? And some of these things, it looks like it would be logical, I don't say much about it, and I wait, is this happening? So I'm keeping myself informed, and I'm understanding whatever it is that's going on so that I can make my own conscious choices about it. So I think it's important to really get that there is a lot of censoring that's going on with regard to the news as well. So whatever form of news you want to look at, check it out, but look at various options of it and actually talk with people that make sense to you. And above all, if you find yourself going into fear with the news, it might not be the best and highest news for you. I feel like I'm just rattling on here. I kind of am rattling on. It's a good thing I have a whole list of things that I was going to rattle on about. I'm just wondering here for a quick second. I think this is the 4th of July weekend. Everybody's probably going out and already having fun on a Thursday night. So the other thing where we can be a bit manipulated is in, believe it or not, the schools. And you want to look at what's being taught and what's not being taught. And just for fun, because I think it's really important for everyone to not just even take my word for things, go and look up school board meetings, like contentious school board meetings, or parents taking over school boards. There are a lot of parents across the whole United States that are looking at the suggested reading for their kids. They're looking at various things that are being taught to kids, and they're like, well, I don't think I want my kid reading that. One parent meeting that I was looking at, different parents got up and they started reading from the suggested reading material that their child was given. So they're taking out things like Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, from what I understand, and they're putting in these books. And I'm telling you, the parents are reading these things. Some of it was pornographic. I mean, it was pretty racy, let's just say. And this is for younger kids. And even if it's up till high school, I don't think it's a school board's prerogative to have our kids reading things that are, let's just say, nasty. That's the only way I'm going to say it. And I think it's super important to pay attention. So if you've got kids in school, listen to what they're being taught. As another example, my daughter was she was on one of her Zoom classes, and I'm just sitting there doing my own work, and I'm listening, and I'm looking at her like a little shocked, because it wasn't the school curriculum, and it wasn't, I don't think it was probably approved. I think it was a social science teacher, was having his own opinion on what was going on politically at the moment. And it wasn't a non-biased opinion. It was like definitely on whatever side he was on, his opinion. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, this is what our kids are being taught. It's not this non-biased, information-based, here's the Constitution, here's what it looks like. It was more like, this is what's going on from my opinion, and this is where we need to be, and this is what we need to do. And I gotta say, I was not pleased about it. And my daughter begged me not to say anything about it, and I'm thinking she's old enough to know better. But I think it's, if my kids were younger, if they were in elementary school, I definitely would be looking into this. At this point, they're going into college, and they're adults, and I have to step back and do all the other stuff that I'm doing. So, when you're parents, sometimes it's like you have to let them go on and be adults, and you got to step back and, know that they're doing the right thing. But when they're kids, we have to be aware, and we have to look at what's going on with them. The other thing that I was looking at, it's like, I don't know about you all, but I'm 58, and when I was learning math, it was very simple. 2 + 2 = 4. You do the long division. You would do the things that I could get that. I'm not a math person at all. So my daughters were in school as this new math came in, this new core curriculum, and I was looking at it, and it was like, amazing. It was so much more complicated. It was a lot more, I don't know, it's just like, it wasn't as simple as we had learned before, and I couldn't understand why they were doing it. I still don't understand that part of it. But again, as a parent, you got to look at this and really be upfront with your kids and look at what they're learning and, be a part of that. It's important to see what it is that's going into their little brains or their big brains. And then for the last thing that I want to talk about is emotional freedom. And that's kind of more the avenue that I roll with here in the office. And that was the biggest topic that I wanted to look at today with you all. So when we're looking at emotional freedom, and I've said this before, when we're in our fear feelings, we're not in our emotional freedom. We're kind of caught up in our unconscious thinking. It's like if you're in your anger, if you're in your anxiety, if you're feeling stressed a lot of the time, or if you're actually fearful of something that might be happening in the future and you're worried. When you have that going on, you're not in your freedom. Literally, your mind and your heart are kind of locked up, and it makes it really challenging to live in life. I've had many people who, and myself included, I used to be very locked up. I used to be quite the mess. And over this period of time, in the process of unlocking those unconscious beliefs and transforming them one by one, that's why I can sit here and talk to myself tonight with Kim. Hopefully she's still on there. and be actually quite all right with it. I freed myself from the anxiety of public speaking, freed myself from the anxiety of talking about the stuff that I do in a way that is, in person and on stage or whatever you want to call this. So when you're having those fear feelings, it's super important to get that's not where we're supposed to live. It's like if you think about somebody who's agoraphobic. Agoraphobic is not somebody who lives here in Agora and they're phobic. Agoraphobic is people who can't leave their home. So they stay literally locked up in their home because there is a terror of leaving the home. And I don't think I've ever talked about this in public. My mother was agoraphobic. My mother was agoraphobic for like 10 years, and it was super hard for her. And I want to exactly explain how she became agoraphobic. She had had a hysterectomy, and they took everything out. They didn't leave in the things that would balance out her hormones. So she's, would go to the grocery store, and she would just have a panic attack. And then she just got to the point where she was afraid to go out because she would have a panic attack, because she didn't realize at the time, when you take everything out and you don't go on a hormone replacement therapy, it whacks you. It knocks you for a loop. It's hard enough to go through menopause and whatever we go through. I've been through it. It took 10 years. It's a lot to go through, but when they basically gut you and then your hormones are raging, you can easily go into a panic attack. So what happened with her, she had these panic attacks, and then she just got to the point where it's like, I just can't even leave the house. So she was locked up, no freedom in her mind, no freedom in her body, no freedom in her emotions. And it was a long time. So what did she do? She didn't go to a therapist, and I was always so impressed that she did this. And I think it's important for people to understand how powerful the human will is, our willpower. So she just had enough. And one day, I think we had talked, and I said, well, you got to do something. And so she went for a walk around the block. And that was good. It was a very big deal. And then she went for a longer walk and a longer walk. And then she got in the car and she drove somewhere. And before you know it, she got herself a job. And then she started going out to clubs and she started turning into this social butterfly. So she worked through it day by day by day and getting herself out of it. So it's important to really understand when we are having a lack of freedom in our lives, it's not so much that it's what our life is, it's what we're creating with our emotions and our thoughts. So I want you to think about in your own life right now, what is something that you're afraid of? Could be anything. I actually had a client a few days ago, and her life is really good. It went from being upside down to, I mean, like really, really good. And she's having all these good things. And then she tells me in all of the good news, it was like one of those sessions where it was like, yay, you're doing really good. And she said something about not wanting to be home alone. And I was like, And she's afraid to be home alone. So she was creating an event, an opportunity to get out of the house when everybody else was going to be gone. And so I asked her about it. It's like, why is it that you're afraid to be home alone? And we did that process of understanding what that is. And as we were talking, I have people do this fear into power work. So you're recognizing what is the fear. And she understood because she recognized in the past the situation that happened at their home. Somebody did kind of break into their environment and it really scared her. So there's a part of it where ever since then it's like somebody else might break in. So when we were looking at it, it's like, all right, so the circumstances that were back then are not the circumstances that are happening right now. Right now, you guys are in a good situation. Everything is good. It's no longer that same thing. And then the other part of it is, so she could recognize, here's the fear. This is what it looks like. And so she's freeing up her mind. She's freeing up her emotions and her body physically. So then the other part of it, and more important part to do, is that first button, intention. So if you no longer want to be afraid, then you have to set a new intention and then take the actions that follow that. So for her, it's like, what will make you feel more safe at home? What can you do? And I told her, I want you to start imagining in your mind, if you are home, what would be those things that you would do? How do you own your ability to be home and feeling comfortable and free in your own home? And so she came up with a plan. She came up with all these things that she could do. And by the end of the session, this very good session, I think that there was a part of her, it's like, all right, I want to be home alone now. She wanted to having that freedom to be home by herself and feeling really good about it. And I was telling her about that, like when I go on my camping trips, a lot of people look at that and they think, oh my God, how can you do that? I would be so afraid. And I was explaining to her ahead of time in my own mind and in my heart, I own that feeling of, confidence, that feeling of safety. And I know that if anybody came to bother me, I have all of my tools. I've got my funny little hammer, my mace, my air horn, my ability to think fast and take action. So there's not any part of me that's afraid when I go on those trips. So I want you to think about in your own life, is there something that you have been afraid of that really isn't founded? Or maybe you're afraid of something and it's because of an event that happened in your life earlier. Think about if there's anything that causes you to feel locked up, like you're not free and moving forward. I'll give you another example of it. A lot of people, I'll just back it up a little bit. I grew up in Florida, and there were a few moments where there were episodes with snakes. So I was really terrified of snakes. So I would find myself at various points not wanting to go. Like, I have this beautiful mountain behind me, and when I first was working here, it's like, oh, probably snakes up there. I'm not sure I want to go there. But I took a group out on a hike one time, and we were talking about, snakes and being afraid of them. And it was a good moment to literally own our ability to step back and say, if there were a snake, what would we do? How do you set it up in your mind ahead of time? So as an example, I did end up going for a walk in these mountains, and ahead of time, I knew I'm creating a bubble of immunity, like I do on my camping trips. I'm safe, I'm divinely guided, everything's all good. And if I come across a snake, I'm going to know well ahead of time. My intuition will tell me. And if I come across a snake, I'm going to stop well before the snake. I'm going to know that it's there. And so in my mind, I'm already picturing, I don't need to be afraid. This little thing is probably more afraid of me than I am of it. So on this day, sure enough, I'm on this walk and I see it up ahead of me. And it was such a funny moment because I had done that work, because I had mapped it out in my mind, because I had pictured the thing and known I'm going to be okay with it. I literally had a little conversation with it, took some pictures of it, and it was good. It was all good. And I went on my merry little way, and I don't have to be having that fear that I had as a kid of snakes. Actually, there's a funny story. When we were growing up, my brother and I, we would go to Kissimmee, Florida. My parents had a cottage there. And there were snakes. I mean, one day I walked out the door and there's this huge moccasin just right there. I shut that door really quick. And I don't know what possessed me one morning, but I'm in there. And I guess my brother and my stepfather had gone fishing and my mother was still asleep. So I go into the living room and I'm just like, waiting for like a cockroach or a snake or something. And for whatever reason, I lifted up the pillow of the couch, and sure enough, there was a snake rolled up under the pillow. I don't know, I guess spirit guided me to look under that pillow. I went flying into my mother's bed so fast. And then another thing about a snake, it's like they know. I mean, there's this fear attracts. It just does. And my kid was in first grade, and for whatever reason, they needed a babysitter for this snake called licorice. I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be in its cage the whole time. It'll be fine, whatever. And I think I had to feed it or something. I stick my hand in there and that thing bit me. I had to go running over to my neighbor, this teenager, and have him come and put the snake back in the thing for me. So now there's no longer that energy around it. And to be clear, I don't make those choices anymore to bring a snake into my environment. I don't know why I go off on these tangents, but I do. But it gives you an idea of, how we become terrified of things. And when you're looking at it, it's like consciously, logically, there would be a part of me that says, I'm not going to bring that snake into my home, or if I do bring the snake into my home, somebody else is going to feed it. We're going to just set that up. But no, luckily I'm much more ahead of that now. Let me see where I'm at with my notes. So the other part of emotional, when we're feeling not free, there's that part of it where, and I see this a lot, where people don't want to do something because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. And I don't mean like a snake kind of hurt, like you're going to get hurt that way. They don't get into relationships because they're afraid that they're going to get hurt. So they don't own their freedom to be with other people and be open and be just free. And I think that because we have, and this goes especially for young adults, people who have kind of grown up in the this I think that there is a lack of freedom in feeling comfortable with each other in person. And I wanted to address that as well because I work with a fair amount of people who have had a struggle with communication, with feeling easy. It's like their heart is locked up because they have had whatever kind of bad experience, or because they're in here and they're, you know, it's like it's safe in here. Kind of like the agoraphobic. If I live in my phone, if I talk to people from in here, I'm safe. And then you get actually in somebody else's energy and you're there with them, and there's this, oh, what if I say something or do something and embarrass myself, or whatever could be the thought process. So I think we're in a moment right now where it's interesting because we all do have these phones, we live in them, but because we have now come out of our lockdowns and we're having a lot more freedom, I do see people going out and about more, but I do see also a lot of people who are struggling to feel comfortable back out in the world again and be free to be with other people. So it's important to maybe do like what my mother did and go out and just, try a little event of some sort, or maybe make a group with some of your friends that you haven't connected with in a while and meet up at the park or meet up at a restaurant. Restaurants are open again. It's important to own your freedom to be with each other in a way that is, loving. And I just want to say open. We've been locked up for so long, and I think there's a lot of people that got into a habit of feeling locked up. So it's an important moment right now where we get out and we kind of stretch our wings. I've said this before, but it's worth saying again. A lot of us were kind of like in a cocoon for a while there, and in the cocoon there's a lot of transformation that takes place. There's a lot that happens with a caterpillar as they go into there, and it's the same with us. We have imaginal cells. We have the ability to think cognitively. We have the ability to change our thinking. Our brains are very plastic. They call it plasticity. So our neurons are always firing with whatever's going on, and we can change what's firing. We can change the mindset of things. So there's this part of freeing up our mind, freeing up our hearts, and freeing up our physical selves in a way that brings more happiness. It brings more joy. It brings more abundance. Look at financial freedom as well. So there is all of these beliefs that make us have the experience that's great or have the experience that's not so great. So in a moment like this, when we're looking at our freedom, it's important to determine for yourself what equals freedom. What do you want? What's your intention? You have to sit back and determine that for yourself, or not. I'm looking at the time. The other thing about financial freedom, because we haven't addressed that, this is a really big one. We have grown up in grown into a very kind of materialistic society. And there's all this there's this even a phrase being a hype beast, and having these like high ticket items and having like big expensive things because it's like what looks cool or what looks good. And then we spend so much money on these items and we put ourselves into whatever debt. The more debt, the less freedom. So I think it's super important. It's like one of the lessons that I've really been teaching my kids, because I did not learn this lesson, is spend and buy things according to the kind of money that you are making, and make sure that you're putting your money into some sort of savings or investment that is secure, so that I have money here and I have every ability to have my ends meet. Because when you are in debt, that is a choking on the freedom. And But because we have now come out of our lockdowns and we're having a lot more freedom, I do see people going out and about more, but I do see also a lot of people who are struggling to feel comfortable back out in the world again and be free to be with other people. So it's important to maybe do like what my mother did and go out and just, try a little event of some sort, or maybe make a group with some of your friends that you haven't connected with in a while and meet up at the park or meet up at a restaurant. Restaurants are open again. It's important to own your freedom to be with each other in a way that is, loving. And I just want to say open. We've been locked up for so long, and I think there's a lot of people that got into a habit of feeling locked up. So it's an important moment right now where we get out and we kind of stretch our wings. I've said this before, but it's worth saying again. A lot of us were kind of like in a cocoon for a while there, and in the cocoon there's a lot of transformation that takes place. There's a lot that happens with a caterpillar as they go into there, and it's the same with us. We have imaginal cells. We have the ability to think cognitively. We have the ability to change our thinking. Our brains are very plastic. They call it plasticity. So our neurons are always firing with whatever's going on, and we can change what's firing. We can change the mindset of things. So there's this part of freeing up our mind, freeing up our hearts, and freeing up our physical selves in a way that brings more happiness. It brings more joy. It brings more abundance. Look at financial freedom as well. So there is all of these beliefs that make us have the experience that's great or have the experience that's not so great. So in a moment like this, when we're looking at our freedom, it's important to determine for yourself what equals freedom. What do you want? What's your intention? You have to sit back and determine that for yourself, or not. I'm looking at the time. The other thing about financial freedom, because we haven't addressed that, this is a really big one. We have grown up in grown into a very kind of materialistic society. And there's all this there's this even a phrase being a hype beast, and having these like high ticket items and having like big expensive things because it's like what looks cool or what looks good. And then we spend so much money on these items and we put ourselves into whatever debt. The more debt, the less freedom. So I think it's super important. It's like one of the lessons that I've really been teaching my kids, because I did not learn this lesson, is spend and buy things according to the kind of money that you are making, and make sure that you're putting your money into some sort of savings or investment that is secure, so that I have money here and I have every ability to have my ends meet. Because when you are in debt, that is a choking on the freedom. And gotta say, I've been there myself. It's a hard place to be. So it's a good time to step back and look at various parts of your financial world, and where can I create more freedom for myself? How can I make more money? How can I hone down on some of the things that are not necessary anymore? So you're creating that avenue of, I'm okay. And to be clear, I totally get it that we have been through this really hard moment, and a lot of people have lost jobs. I understand. And that is a really challenging place to be in. But when you are now, like a lot of people are coming off of having, what is it called? Money from the government. And so there's a lot of jobs that are going to need to be filled. There's a lot of people that are needing to get a job. If you're one of those people and you really want to be having financial abundance, it's super important to really be in a mindset where I'm getting the job, I'm getting the career that's right for me, I'm creating income. You have to remember you're thinking and you're feeling all the time, and that's going into this quantum intelligence. So it's important to recognize, yeah, I'm in a moment. This is just the moment. And where I'm going, I'm creating. What is that thing that you want to create? Do you want a new job? Do you want a job? Do you want to have your bills met? I can't even express to you enough. Miracles happen all the time. I was in one of those moments myself, and out of nowhere, this guy calls me up and he's like, "Hi, my name is so-and-so," and long story short, there was an investment, not an investment, a inheritance that I got out of nowhere. So I kept putting my attention on money comes to me from known and unknown sources. That's one of the power statements that Nick teaches in his mental bank work that he does. So I would find myself going, ugh, because I was in a bad moment, and I'd keep going back to money comes to me from known and unknown sources. My needs are met. Everything's working out with divine right action taking place. So I kept going from whatever my fear feelings were to, nope, I can't even live there. I can't do that. I have to keep bringing my attention, my awareness back to anything that moves me in the direction that I am choosing. Because you're choosing anyway, unconsciously with consequences or conscious intention. It's important to get that piece because I understand that this is a super hard time. I've worked with many people who have been in this hard time. I get it. And it's important to not get stuck in it. This is an opportunity where there's going to be a whole bunch of new things happening. There's a lot of things in the pipeline, a lot of great opportunities that are coming about. So take that opportunity for yourself and then take some kind of action. Any kind of action. Even if it's just a little step here, calling somebody who might have some opportunities for you, putting yourself out with resumes, whatever it is. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that can be done. You know, really focus and put your attention on anything that's bringing you what you're looking for. Yes? So, I don't know where everybody is tonight, but I'm kind of at the point of being done with all of my things that I was going to say. So I may end up cutting this short because usually I have a little bantering going on back and forth with different people in here. So as this 4th of July is going on, the invitation is to be in the day and really own whatever freedom means to you. Could be anything. And start locking and loading that. It's really important to recognize what freedom has not been. So from here till July 4th, look at your life. Where are you not free? What's going on that's keeping you locked up in your heart, that's keeping you locked up in your mind, or in your physical body, or possibly in your financial situation? Look at the different areas of your life with no judgment. Judgment doesn't work. Judgment is, unfortunately, just going to keep you stuck. So there's that timeline tool that I have people do. You're in your choice point right now, and everything that ever happened doesn't define you one way or another. It just means that's where you were with the consciousness that you had at the time. So now, what's your intention? What is it that you are creating? What's that thing that is going to make your heart happy? What's that thing that's going to create this sense of freedom in all areas of your life? Write that down. And then take the actions that bring you closer to that. Okay? So happy 4th of July. There's that song by Lee Greenwood that's keep running in my mind. And I am still proud to be an American. And I'm proud to be here doing this thing that I do. I do it because Spirit told me, just to be clear. This isn't my first thing. But I'm really proud to be here and hold space for freedom. And it's not just for you, it's for our whole country. It's for the world. And there's so many things that are moving towards freedom right now, and we all just hold a big space for that. Hold it for yourself, hold it for each other, hold it for everyone across the globe. The best and highest for humanity. With that being said, my husband has just pulled up here to take me to that concert. So I'm going to catch up with you guys with him on Main Street Metaphysics next Tuesday, and I will be back here on next, there he is, walking over there, coming to get me, next Thursday at 7 o'clock with Mainstream Conscious Mind Tripping. So much love to all of you. Happy 4th of July. Happy Freedom Day.